Ready? Ready, go! Hello and welcome to In the Court of the Wenton King. What are we doing?
We're starting a new band this week.
We
Deep
are.
Purple.
Yeah, this is the last requested band. We've got to the end and we can actually do our own things after that. Please don't ask for another band, it's not funny. I'm on the brink of buying an 8-string guitar. That's quite interesting. 300 quid. You know, a 6-string guitar is 300 quid as well. There doesn't seem to be any change in cost per number of strings. But then I think a 12-string is quite a lot.
Yeah.
That's a different thing. I'm skipping a whole string.
If it's a 7-string, does the price go up? Do odd numbers cost more than even numbers?
Perhaps they do. But now obviously I can just only need to play the bottom strings and go and nothing else. So, yeah, Deep Purple. Yeah, they're quite famous. That's an interesting way of putting it in a way, because you know their peers are considered to be Led Zeppelin and Sabbath, and in terms of reputation, in terms of when they play concerts, how many tickets they sell, and all that kind of stuff, they come third now. And in the mid-70s, they were kind of first, or on the brink of first. They sold the most records, the biggest selling band in the world in 73, 74. So that's interesting. It's interesting to look at why, I think, which we'll probably do over the course of the 3 albums we're going to do. I quite like Deep Purple, as you can see. So my opinions of them are biased in many ways, but it does also mean I'm overly critical of it in another way. I mean, fans tend to be like that, so that's interesting. Whereas you sort of know them, but not like Sabbath. So you haven't sort of latched onto them as a part of life as Sabbath, have you?
No, I do not identify with Deep Purple.
Because it's a different thing, isn't it?
Yeah. My impression of Deep Purple was, or my feelings about it, they are just below. Led Zeppelin are the top tier, yeah. Deep Purple are just below that, and they're sort of on par with Black Sabbath. So they're in the Champions League, but they've not got there because they're the champions of the division. They're in there because they're in the top 4 sort of thing. I find them quite interesting because they have a keyboardist who is quite prominent in the band, and yet they don't sound very keyboardy. Although the organ is prominent in the music, it's not sort of what I would consider keyboardy music.
Yeah, it's not keyboard. You're right. Yeah, it's organ doing guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, it's the famous thing John Lord putting his organ through a Marshall amp and all that stuff. I think they are tremendously influential, but in a subtle musical way, rather than that sounds like Sabbath, that sounds like Led Zeppelin. You don't think they're just trying to sound like Deep Purple. It doesn't really happen like that, and you don't get, the keyboard guitar thing. You don't really get that. That would be a specialism, So it hasn't had that massive influence like that. And obviously the swingy drums is not a thing. Strangely, because it kind of comes from Ringo. But obviously drumming should be like Mark Portnoy, and it should be, which is great as well. So that's interesting. I think their influence is more about where they're getting where the notes come from, and that it's very much a European thing, and it's the neoclassical thing as well. Without being overtly, we're going to make a 20-minute 4-movement piece now. There's none of that. There's inflections of classical melodies and that kind of thing, which is hugely influential. Actually, I don't mean Malmsteen. Obviously it is, but I mean the whole of that, Nightwish and Dragon Force, and which became so huge in the late 90s, I think. All of that, kind of traces a lineage back to Purple. Arguably Rainbow as well, or maybe more, or I don't know. But yeah, that's their thing. Plus the guitar playing itself, in a sense, is massively influential in one sense, and not at all influential in another, which is also interesting.
Do you might laugh at this and you might cut this out, Kev, but when I think of Deep Purple's influence, I think 80s hair spray bands.
You're onto something there. Yeah. You are onto something there, because, I mean, in a way, the 80s hair metal bands, they were trying to look like Led Zeppelin, and it was kind of a Led Zeppelin thing, but it's not like Led Zeppelin, is it? And that's where this sort of image of Led Zeppelin of being kind of sophisticated, because next to Poison, they are, aren't they? And Poison look like Led Zeppelin with big hair and whatever. But the Blackmore thing, which sounds so weird now, and it's so interesting that someone so influential, is so incredibly guitar-y. He's a guitarist's guitarist. So to me, that's something guitarists like. It's not something everybody is going to like, which seems really strange, but it's his influence on shredding, really, in that he kind of started that. And that's why it sounds weird, because it was before it had been invented, really. But he massively influenced Van Halen, I think Randy Rhoads as well. Although apparently, and significantly, Van Halen doesn't cite him as an influence, because the one time we met him, he just said, "Who the hell are you?" I think Blackmore was talking to John Bonham backstage somewhere, and Van Halen comes up, and Blackmore just goes, "Who the hell are you?" And so he's a nice guy, obviously. So yeah, the thing about Purple, it's interesting. Although we talked about them with Sabbath and Zepp, they actually came first. They started in '68 as a very different band, kind of Austin Powers music. That's the way I like. I enjoy it if I think of it as that. It's and obviously they had that big hit with Hush in America. They had a #1 hit in America, which is strange. It's not a thing that normally happens with bands work their way up in the US very, very slowly, because it takes time, because it's such a big place. And then we're just sort of fading away, really. And in the UK they never really took off, and they were seen as commercial and sort of out of touch a bit.
Well, I do consider them a little bit commercial, and I think it's because when you compare them to Led Zeppelin, they actually sound, in a way, a lot cleaner than Led Zeppelin.
Oh yeah.
And I associate, for whatever reason, I associate that with commercialism, not just good sound engineering or whatever.
Yeah, the riffing, etc., makes it clearer and pronounced. It's not cultural like Led Zeppelin, I suppose is the point. There's no cultural real influence. There's the influence is in music from things, not from we're doing folk now. Not really.
Yeah.
But they did 3 albums in that style. Rod Evans was the singer. He's kind of a cod Elvis kind of singer in a way. I mean, but kind of an Austin Powers singer. And there is a fantastic bit of footage of, I'll say fantastic, entertaining bit of footage of them playing Hush at the Playboy Mansion on Hugh Hefner's TV show. It's all very Austin Powers, which is really cool. The 3rd album is really good. The first album is a bit dodgy, actually, but we won't get there. And then what happened was that, I don't know quite how they managed to do this, but somehow they got the go-ahead to write a concerto and get Malcolm Arnold to conduct it and the BBC to film it. Somehow their management got this. I don't know how they did it. I mean, it's so important in their rise in a way. It's amazing they did that. So John Lord had to write a concerto, a whole concerto, whilst touring, and of course a decision was made to get rid of the singer and the bass player and replace them with Ian Gillan and Roger Glover from Episode 6. We were kind of a pop band, but obviously Gillan had a formidable voice. It wasn't just a sort of silly Elvis impersonator. The reason they got rid of the bass player, there wasn't anything to do with his bass playing, it was because they wanted Roger Glover, because he's a songwriter. They realised they needed a songwriter. This was where Blackmore kind of started to take over the band, in that it was kind of John Lord's band before then. And he said, right, we've got to make a heavy rock album. And he's been absolutely clear on this, that he'd been listening to Led Zeppelin and he thought, well, we should do that. And I think the interesting thing about Blackmore right through his whole career, right up till 1997 really, is he just being commercial, or is he doing what he wants to do? And it's never quite clear. It's possible there's only a couple of times in his career he's actually done the music he wanted to do, but he always had a canny sense of what needs to be done right now, and almost seems to know what's going to happen. So he leaves Purple at the right time, and apparently displayed Martin Birch, the producer, the first Iron Maiden album, and said, you should produce them. So it's a shame that they didn't go in that direction. Anyway, yeah, so the brief in a way was, let's sound like Led Zeppelin. They got this amazing singer, and they started writing songs, and throughout '69 they're touring heavily. John Lord is writing a concerto whilst touring, so actually they'd play the gig and you have to go home and stay up all night writing music. So the fact that the concerto is actually really good. Legend has it that it isn't, but it's actually really good, although the performance of the orchestra was a bit dodgy. There are newer performances which are much better, but Blackmore said, I don't want to do this, and the argument was, well, let's try it, let's do in rock. If it doesn't work, we'll go back and play concertos forever. It's like he already knew, it's very strange, he knew it was going to be a success. which gives us Deep Purple in rock. Yeah, which gave us Deep Purple in rock. So it's very much something written on the road, you know. And it was hugely successful, musically and commercially, which is interesting. But if you compare it to its contemporaries, you know, if you think what's different about it, I think arguably you could take Led Zeppelin 2, first Black Sabbath album, and In Rock as things that you can compare, and they're all different. And the thing about In Rock is it doesn't really sound like anything else by Deep Purple. But just imagine if you just turned everything up full and played very loud and very intensely, that's what it would sound like. But almost without distorting. It kind of does distort as well. So it's got a unique, noisy sound. It's noisy. If you read reviews of Led Zeppelin 2, it'll talk about the sort of intensity of the music. You know, this is in a way, this sounds like all the rhetoric about Led Zeppelin 2. This kind of really sounds like that, in that it's completely over the top and incredibly intense.
Okay, yeah. Well, we should get on with some tracks.
Okay.
Before we continue the history lesson next time.
Okay. Speaking is the opening song. The intro to Speaking was actually cut out of the American version. If you put on Speaking, you will understand why. To someone who loves, someone who's been to concerts, loves intense guitar sound, it's great. Obviously, it's a bit of a shock if you first put it on, I would imagine. It's not, it's not good times, bad times, or anything like that. It's basically just some intense guitar, noisy stuff. But of course, it sort of dissipates into a nice bit of neoclassical organy stuff going on, into this incredibly, what's the word? Brash.
I was going to say bombastic.
Bombastic riff, and with these sort of intense, shouty rock and roll lyrics all bunched together over the top of it. It's incredibly intense. It really is. And of course, the Purple will never like that again.
It's a good intro to the album because it is so loud and full on. I was going to say, oh yeah, the thing that strikes me with Deep Purple, maybe particularly this album, is the songs always seem to be sort of constructed with an eye on the live performance.
Yeah.
Because they did a lot of touring, you know, they would tour for 15 months at a time, all over the world. So obviously they've got to think about, well, how can we perform this, how is it going to come across on stage? And this immediately said to me, this would sound great live. It would be a great sort of addition to a live show.
I mean, in a way, this is the only Deep Purple studio album that sounds like them live, because they sounded different live to all the sort of famous, more commercial albums. This sounds like what they sounded like live. And so it is interesting that a lot of the songs weren't played live. Only a couple of them, really. It's interesting.
Bloody good, yeah. It's a bloody good track. Bloody good opening.
Yeah.
Track 2?
Okay, yeah, track 2, Bloodsucker. Not played live at all. It was done live for the BBC, live in the studio. Other than that, it was never played live, strangely. Great song. It's really dirty. It's these dirty riffs in a way that, you know, Led Zeppelin wouldn't do that, and Sabbath certainly wouldn't do that. It's showing off the playing in a way, which is kind of what Deep Purple is. Deep Purple is more about the playing than the songs. It's just fantastic, and you've got a bit of a trade-off with the organ and guitar at the end.
Yeah, I mean, this is what rock sounds like, as far as I'm concerned. Sort of, that is, I'd imagine it. Yeah, that's straight up rock, and it'd be sort of like if you weren't particularly familiar with the genre, that is how you would imagine rock to sound. It is very it's a bit unfair to say it's very typical, because it's
in some ways it is, yeah, and in some ways it's not. I mean, I don't think you wouldn't really get that now, because it doesn't have the consistent pulse, the stop and start bits, and do 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 do, which you wouldn't do now, interestingly. But I mean, obviously that makes it brilliant.
Yeah.
It's why the 70s were better.
Yeah. Discuss. Track 3?
3, Child in Time. That's the big famous song. At the time, they only played 3 songs on this album: Speaking, Child in Time, and Into the Fire. But this is the big famous one, obviously. It's Ian Gillan's soaring vocal, obviously showing off his falsetto thing that he developed, that people call screaming. At the time, it sounded better live, actually. It didn't sound better live later on, but at the time, it did sound better live. And obviously, also the famous solo in the middle. It's obviously Ban the Bomb stuff, mutually assured destruction and all that stuff. It's interesting how the middle section has a swing to it. So although this is a, it's like Machine Gun. It's this sort of reflection of war and something very intense, but it has a swing to it and a jazzy feel to the middle section, which is interesting. Apparently taken very seriously by underground pressure groups in Soviet countries and stuff like that who were fighting for freedom, and it was kind of their anthem. Apparently.
Interesting. I love this track. One of my favourite Deep Purple tracks, as I should imagine a lot of people feel the same. And this is the thing, when Deep Purple do a good song, it is a great song.
Yeah.
And this is a great one. It's sort of like, they almost had a sort of like a band meeting at the beginning. Oh, we're going to record this track now. Right, what we're going to do is Ian Gillan's going to start singing and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, go.
Go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get more and more awesome as the song goes along. So it's sort of like goes up and up and up in awesomeness. Although, remember, it started at awesome, so it's still going up, yeah, more going up to awesome. And we get to the middle, and then we're going to drop back down to the beginning, and we're going to go again.
Yes,
and just do it again, and we're going to have 10 minutes of that. That's a great game plan.
Yeah,
because they pulled it off.
And also, it's so powerful, and yet it is incredibly simple. A band who are known for their playing, it's they're in terms of technical ability, they're kind of a level above their peers a little bit, or kind of a lot, and yet they're writing things that are so simple. I mean, really, really simple. It's just 2 notes, the whole song almost, and it's brilliant. We should point out the intro, or the kind of riff is inspired by Bombay Calling, which is the thing, Led Zeppelin style. Track 4,
Flight of the Rat.
For me, this is one of the big songs on the album, sort of, and then it's a fast jam along kind of thing. There's all sorts of different bits to it, very instrumental and stuff like that. There is some fantastic drumming on there, never been played live. Apparently Ian Paice said he will not play that live, so it has never been played live, amazingly.
I find this song a little bit tiring. It's too long.
It is long.
It's too long. I mean, it's just come after a great epic. What you need is what we, normally refer to as a buffer track or a bridging track.
Yeah, I think he turned the record over.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what it was.
Yeah, obviously we don't have that luxury on CDs. Yeah, it's there's some nice drumming going on there, but at over 7 minutes, after just listening to 10 minutes of pure awesomeness, it's too much.
Yeah. Track 5?
Into the Fire.
Into the Fire, very different thing. This is, Ian Gillan described this as rock and roll with its trousers down. That's what he called it. I see this as a very Gillan thing, and that kind of the style that they went into with the next album. It's this really dirty, slow stuff. Really good. It played a lot live, interestingly. It's interesting that they played that one live.
Yeah.
Weird one.
It's slow. It sounds because it's slow, it sounds quite grungy actually. That's what I can say about that, really.
Track 6?
Livin Wreck.
Livin Wreck. This is the interesting one because supposedly Blackmore said if it's not fast and exciting, it doesn't belong on the album. Everything's got to be mega intense. We'll turn everything up to 11. But this one isn't actually. This is a middle-paced song. It doesn't have that intensity. And I think the outtake Cry Free was perhaps the one that was included originally there, which is a faster song, but it's actually much more generic than this one. This is quite a nice song. And again, lost in history in a way. It's not something that's been played very much. They played it live in like 2006, I think, for like 4 shows or something. That was it.
The truth is, they need to, in my opinion, they need to change it more. We've had lots of this kind of sound now. You need to change your strings or use a different guitar or something like that because it's starting to sound a little bit samey at this point.
Yeah, it's a whole album of playing. It's like they just played it live. And it all sounds much the same. Yeah. It's about the playing. You listen to that cool bit of drumming there, and that, rather than the song.
Yeah.
They were never fantastic songwriters. I mean, Roger Glover was a bit of a godsend in that sense, and without him, the times they were without him, the songwriting isn't as good.
I think it's these type of songs that just pulled off the top tier for me a little bit. They should be the second tier songs. Should be better. They should be more recognisable rather than sort of. It feels like there's a big, massive stuff in the Deep Purple background.
Yeah.
That not really interested in penetrating.
They're deep purpling.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's the thing. I mean, my argument is, you could say Deep Purple are better than Led Zeppelin in every way except the songs, and obviously that means Led Zeppelin are better.
Yeah, that's where it matters.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Okay. Yeah.
7.
Hard Loving Man.
Don't play it with your finger. That's ridiculous. Perhaps I should do it like Steve Harris. Yeah, ridiculously intense. It's so over the top. I was very surprised. In like 2008 or something, they started playing it, and they kept playing it, and it hadn't been played. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous song, but that's what makes it so good. As a song, it isn't even a song almost. It's just this mad riff and some insane stuff going on, and some fantastic playing, and some screamy vocals. And it goes on into a jam after it as well, which is kind of the Mandrake route, Deep Purple jamming thing, which is actually kind of comes from Blue Rondo La Turque, which obviously was popularised by The Nice. So there's a bit of it's not a coincidence. But what a way to end an album! I mean, in a way, one of the most intense albums ever.
It's like everything's distorted on this. Not just the guitar, but the keyboard and the vocals.
Yeah.
Just it's all distorted.
You've got to be in the mood.
I actually enjoyed it because I'll be honest with you, Livin Wreck, I was getting a little bit bored.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And then this came on, I thought, wow.
Yeah.
It is such a step up that it sounds different, and you got to get your ear in and think, ooh, what's going on here? It almost sounds a little. Well, I'm not sure what they're trying to achieve by it. I don't know if this is a sort of, look, this is how intense we can get, or whether they're actually trying to be a little bit experimental. I don't know. Because it does sound a little bit experimental, doesn't it?
It's certainly unique, isn't it? I mean, there's nothing quite like Hard Living Man. Yeah. They did another song called Hard Living Woman, but it was incredibly bland and 80s.
Everything was in the 80s.
So yeah, the question is, do we review Black Knight? I don't know. Did you listen to Black Knight?
Yeah, well, I know Black Knight anyway. They played it a lot live, didn't they, Black Knight?
Yeah, an awful lot. Yeah, obviously. I think they always have. With Gillan in the band, I think they always have. Yeah, and obviously it sounds different. It's from different production. Much like with Black Sabbath and Paranoid, when they said, no, you've got to record another song. So did Deep Purple, but the difference is they didn't put it on the album. And they recognised that would be a bit of a stigma associated with having a pop single. But they managed to kind of do both without one affecting the other, which was very clever. And I think Sabbath suffered at that they made a big mistake having a single at all.
I mean, Deep Purple do suffer in the sense that most people know Deep Water, Smoke on the Water, and I think they have suffered from that a little bit because
definitely,
sort of that band that did Smoke on the Water, which is such a pathetically small part of their repertoire.
Yeah. I mean, people will know Smoke on the Water and Hush more than anything else. They didn't even write Hush. So yeah, there you go.
Can I just say, crap album cover. It's really sort of.
Actually, I mean, we talked about album covers. I think it's possible Deep Purple hold the record for terrible album covers. This is one of their best ones. It gets worse. There's probably about 3 album covers that aren't terrible. I don't know why. I don't know why they had that problem, but never mind. I mean, it's an iconic work. People like it, or people know it. I don't know if they like it. It's stupid. For me it's 6 eggs, but that's not a real 6 eggs, in that it would be silly for me to not give it 6 eggs because I grew up with it and etc with the guitar and everything. It's probably really a 5 egg album, but I give it 6 eggs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there is one outstanding track on there, Child in Time, and it's never really. There's none of the other tracks are contenders for that, and I think that pulls it down a little bit. There should be more
classics.
Yeah, it does have to be the same level. It has to approach it, push it, if you know what I mean. 4 eggs.
4 eggs. There you go. Join us next week for a shorter review. I promise I will shut up. See you soon.